It has already been a very busy first week of the special session. Let's go ahead and break down some of the big issues at hand. Outside of the state capitol on Thursday, Democrats rallied their supporters ahead of the first committee meeting on congressional redistricting. This is a rare attempt to possibly redraw the lines in the middle of the decade. President Donald Trump hopes to pick up 5 additional Republican seats in Texas. Both the White House and the Senate announced their select committees to tackle the redistricting issue. In the Senate, 6 Republicans are on the committee, including Senators Phil King, Tan Parker, and Angela Paxton from North Texas. There are 3 Democrats. Senator King of Weatherford will chair the committee and is tasked with writing the Senate version of the redistricting bill. Last Monday, he faced a series of questions from fellow senators, many of them Democrats.
We're halfway through the decade. There's no reason to, with all of Texas's growth, to not assume that there have been changes in population. People move in and out, and I know my home county 2 years ago was the 6th fastest growing county in America. So there have been changes, and it's reasonable to take a look at that.
And I heard you say earlier, it was a little bit off the cuff, but I think you said we could redistrict every year. The writers of our state constitution definitely put in 10 years for our state lines, right? So do you really think, and I'm just trying to understand your thought process on this, do you really think redistricting every year would be a good idea?
I'm not an expert on redistricting law, but I think you can do it as often as you wish. Now,
but do you think that's in the best interest of, like, the function of our democracy and the people of Texas?
You know, I think things change, and sometimes it would be called for, and other times it would not.
In his resolution, it only says that we will come in here to take up congressional redistricting. That's it. It doesn't say anything to what the Department of Justice letter said, that the previous congressional districts in Texas constitute unconstitutionally based racial gerrymandering. His call doesn't suggest that.
The call says what it says. I can read it again if you would like.
No, I don't need you to read it. It doesn't say this, does it?
Well, what it says is specifically legislation that provides a revised congressional redistricting plan in light of constitutional concerns raised by the U.S. Department of Justice.
What communications have you had with the Department of Justice?
None.
What communications have you had with the Trump administration?
None.
Well, over in the House, it's a 12-9 split between Republicans and Democrats. Among the local Republicans on the committee, Representatives Charlie Green, John McQueenie, Katrina Pearson, and David Spiller, as well as Democrat Chris Turner. North Texas Representative and committee member David Spiller told us that he's holding off for now on taking a position on redistricting.
I'm just going to keep my powder dry on that and just say, look, we just need to hear the testimony from interested persons and look at that, and we can make a determination what, if anything, needs to be done.
The House committee held its first hearing in Austin on Thursday, and the Republican leading the committee faced more questions about why the legislature needed to address redistricting right in the middle of the decade.
But no, I have not communicated with the Office of Attorney General regarding this redistricting process.
Have you seen any proposed maps that the White House has sent,
no.
or President Trump's operatives have sent?
No. I believe the only map that I have seen is the one that was posted to the public portal, which I reminded everyone, anyone in the public is invited to submit a map. Just because a map is put onto that portal does not mean in any way that that is a map this committee was intending to take up or otherwise. The public is free to submit whatever the public wants.
Okay. So you've seen, no one has sent you any maps for this committee to consider?
No.
That first hearing lasted over 6 hours. Speakers were given a time limit to present their arguments. And at one point during the hearing, as one speaker's time ran out, it became contentious.
No, I'm not going to finish.
Witness's time has expired.
I'm not finished. Because ultimately, who doesn't have a say in this are the people of this state, the 40 million people that you guys just kicked
Witness will come to order.
The people of this state.
The witness does not. The witness is not recognized.
As a result of what you guys have done, this is a result of your policies, and you have no shame.
Okay.
You have no shame. None.
The witness.
Zero.
The witness.
You have no shame for what you've done. And I think that we all should be standing up here and
just cut off his mic.
The witness was eventually and forcibly removed from the room. Nearly 2 more hours of testimony were heard after that. While Democrats have characterized the redistricting effort as a power grab, they've talked openly about ways to block it. They've also mentioned filibusters and staging a walkout to break quorum. But after walking out 4 years ago to protest voting restrictions, the House adopted new rules. Lawmakers who break quorum face a fine of $500 a day. The House Congressional redistricting hearing comes to North Texas next Monday. It'll be held at UT Arlington's Rosebud Theater inside the Hereford University Center on West 1st Street. The meeting is scheduled to start at 5 p.m. The legislature began its review and investigation into the response to the deadly Hill Country flooding last week. During a joint meeting of representatives and senators, the chair of the Senate committee addressed the tone that he wants to see set for those hearings.
Our select committee will not armchair quarterback or attempt to assign blame. To do so would undermine the very goal in the committee's creation. The goal of our committee is to find constructive policy solutions which will prevent future loss of life like what our state has suffered over the past few weeks.
Lawmakers learned during the hearing about the communication issues as first responders couldn't communicate with each other because their radios are not compatible. Also, the lack of training or minimum qualifications for local officials serving as emergency management coordinators, and that the state doesn't have reliable contact information for some local emergency managers. The head of the state's emergency management division also addressed volunteers who came out in droves to help those flooding victims and the families.
We want to really work with you on volunteer management. As you heard, we had 17,000 volunteers show up. And a lot of those were just good-hearted Texans, good-hearted Americans, bringing their resources, their time and treasure, their heavy equipment, working really hard around the clock for no thanks and no pay. That was most of them. But then there are the others that we really need to keep an eye on as well. So we have an organization that you funded several sessions ago called the Incident Support Task Force, the Disaster Recovery Task Force. We have the capability to, in real time, within the first 12 hours of an incident, the first operational period, set up a volunteer reception center where all volunteers should go, and they should check in, and they should share with us their capabilities and what they're capable to do. Are they unskilled labor? Are they electricians and carpenters? Are they want to help sort clothes, or do they want to search for live and missing victims? Fact of the matter is, people come in so quick that we can't control them sometimes, and we don't know who they are. Yet they're going through all of your personal belongings. They're in places that nobody else is supervising or watching them. And I think we should have a deliberate conversation, whether it's here or some point in the future, about making volunteers check in at a location for their safety and for our safety and for their coordination and communication. You may recall that during the time that we were searching, there were several times we had to evacuate the river because of ongoing flooding. When the volunteers check in at a volunteer reception center, they share with us their cell phone number, and they can text a code to us that I can then communicate with them that says, hey, something's coming, get off the river. Or, hey, I need you to check in. The other thing is, once I'm tracking those volunteer hours, we can then use those for in-kind donations from the local community or the state in our FEMA matching grant program. So there's a really good resource and a reason to do this.
Well, the Joint Committee will hold their next hearing on Thursday in Kerrville. They expect to hear from local first responders and from flood victims. Now let's talk about the hemp industry and its regulation, because last Tuesday, a Senate committee unanimously voted to send a bill banning THC to the full Senate. The bill is nearly identical to the one that Governor Abbott vetoed last month. Andrea Lucia was there for the hearing and explains the full Senate is now poised to once again pass the legislation.
This bill is certainly expected to sail through the Senate, and that could set up a showdown between some top Republican leaders. Governor Abbott explicitly asked lawmakers to regulate, not ban these products. Senators today argued that's not going to work.
We'll regulate it. We'll regulate it by banning it, because we've tried regulation on other things.
State senators are standing firm behind an outright ban on publicly available THC.
And it's a one-word answer. Regulate or ban.
Ban. We need to ban this.
Allen Police Chief Steve Dye and Kaufman County DA Early Wiley were the first of several invited witnesses to argue most hemp-derived products on the market today are harmful.
When I went into the largest of the 3 warehouses, it looked like a giant candy store.
Chief Dye, who's led raids of hemp stores and warehouses, argues regulation would be too difficult and costly to be effective.
Regulation would likely be seen as the industry as carte blanche legalization.
Advocates, though, argue a ban would close hundreds of businesses and hurt Texans who use these products.
It would cripple an entire sector of the Texas economy and restrict access to products that many adults responsibly use for pain, sleep, wellness, and just because they can.
Hemp-derived consumables are affordable, accessible, and effective.
Mitch Fuller represents the Texas VFW and says many of its 65,000 veterans see the industry as an alternative to alcohol and opioids. But senators dismiss those claims.
As a veteran, I'm particularly offended and aghast at using veterans.
I'm offended that he's offended that, we're taking a stance on this. Again, no one's using this. That we are doing this on our own volition because it helps us. It works.
Andrea Lucia, CBS News, Texas.
On social media, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick celebrated Tuesday's vote as he continues to push for a complete ban.
Now, why are we standing so strong on a total ban as opposed to some regulatory scheme? It's because in Texas, we listen to law enforcement. Law enforcement has never been more united on an issue to ban these products. We also listen to the Texas Medical Association and the Pediatric Society. And most importantly, we listen to the victims of this terrible scourge of drugs that's being sold to both young people and adults.
In an interview with Impact News last week, the governor did say that he wants to ban, quote, intoxicating consumable THC products, which he views as those with more than 3 milligrams of THC. That's still more than the Senate seems to want to allow. A lot more to come on this issue and others, that's for sure. After the weekend off, both chambers get back to work on Monday.